Hi there. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for the help and support and advice provided. It really is very much appreciated, and hopefully it'll also help other novices like me. Now, when I've produced videos in the past, up until now, I've relied upon the internal mic on the camera to do the sound recording, which obviously isn't great. Unfortunately, my camera, this Sony a6000, it can't actually take one of these little remote mics. It's got to have its own Sony type, which I'm reluctant to buy. So what I've decided to do is to use this little Tascam recorder. So the idea being that once when I assemble the video, when I produce it and stitch all the videos together, I'll also stitch the sound recording side to it as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will come out to be a better sounding video. Anyway, in this video I'm going to be machining the valve chest and cover for the Stuart half beam. So these two castings are very close to the actual size they need to be, and the chest just needs cleaning up with a hand file on all the edges, and in particular on the inside as well, because this face here I'm going to be drilling through later on with a drill bit, and I don't want it to wander when it gets to that point. Now the cover again is pretty much close to size, so apart from this bit here that I can remove with a bench grinder, the rest can be just tidied up with a hand file. So I'll do all that off camera and then I'll get back to you. So I've cleaned both parts up. Now I thought I'd try and clean these sides up using some wet and dry after using the file, and I'm not really happy because there's a bit of a rock there, like that. So the part is actually about 1/10 over size. It should be 1.375 of an inch, and I think it's about 1.385. So the plan is I'm going to put it in the milling vise and just take 5 thou off there and 5 thou off there, and then clean it up again with some wet and dry, and hopefully it'll get those two faces spot on parallel with each other. Now these sides here, they should be 1 9/16 of an inch. And they're slightly under, to be honest. So I had already cleaned these up with a hand file, and probably later on I'll do a bit more work on those. So I'll go over to the mill and sort these edges out. So I'm just going to take about 5 or 6 thou off here, running at 550. A bit of an edge there, so I'll go down by a couple more thou. So go from this end here. Okay, so the milling of the sides worked out okay, albeit you can't see it because I've put some die cam on here. And what I've done is I've just drawn or marked a line, scribed a line down here, which is the centre of the casting. Now, the actual boss of this casting is offset, and the distance between the centre of the boss and the cylinder side needs to be 0.25 of an inch, and the opposite side needs to be 3/16, which is 0.1875. So I've managed to measure the actual size between each edge, and on this side here the actual is equal to 0.2835. So if I take 0.25 off that, I get to round about 33 thou. So 33 thou has got to come off. Let me see. That edge there. And on this side, it measures 0.2355. Take 0.1875 off that, and I get 48 thou. So 48 thou to come off that side. So I'll go over to the mill and put it on some parallels, and we'll machine it down to size. Okay, so there's about 33 thou to come off this. So I'll double check the dimensions and make sure we're a 1/4 of an inch away from the centre. If not, I'll readjust it, and then I'll swap it over and mill the other side. Okay, so I took it out of the vise and checked that the distance from the centre of the boss to the side I've just milled is a 1/4 of an inch, and it's spot on. So I've switched it round. I've just measured the overall width, and it comes in at 0.4835. Now it needs to be in total 7/16, which is 0.4375. So it's 46 thou to come off this side here. Now my original estimate was 48 thou, so I'm happy that 46 is pretty damn close. So I'll just mill this 1/10 thou at a time. Okay, so in the end I decided just to take 20 thou off here, because I don't want to cut into this sort of boss here. So I don't think this width is overly critical. So fingers crossed we'll be okay. Okay, so this is an interesting bit now. So I've scribed the lines for the centre of this boss. And what I need to do is to drill through this boss and the side with this 3/32 of an inch drill, and then into this boss here by just over 1/2 inch. I think it's 9/16 of an inch. Now last time I did this, well no, the first time I did this on the S50, I'd not flattened this area with a file, so the drill wandered and it went off centre. So hopefully this time I'll get it right. But it's extremely tight, because if you look at the length of this drill, I mean, I've not got a lot in the chuck, and bearing in mind I've got to go 1/2 inch further than that. Leaves very little in the chuck. So what I'll have to do when I drill it, I'll have to gradually move this out of the chuck, I think. Anyway, I'll set it up in the mill and see where we go from there. Okay, so I've centred using this wiggler. So what I'll do is I'll replace the wiggler with a centre drill. I'll centre drill, and then we'll have a go drilling with this 3/32 of an inch drill bit. Okay, so I've drilled through this boss, and the drill end is now just sitting on the end of the other side of the casting. Now it needs to be drilled down to a depth of 9/16 of an inch. So what I've done is I've just marked on there with a felt tip pen on the drill bit where it is at the moment, and then from that point I've marked 9/16 of an inch, which is up here. So I'm going to be very limited in terms of how I can hold this in the chuck. But what I'll do first of all is I'll hold it in the chuck sort of around there, and then drill down by that amount, then I'll readjust the drill bit in the chuck, move it further out, and continue like that until I've actually got to that point, and fingers crossed it'll all work. Well, that's as close as I could get. Now I didn't quite make 9/16 of an inch, but hopefully that'll be okay. If it isn't, then I'll have to address that at a later date. So now what I need to do in this upper boss is drill right through with an 1/8 of an inch diameter drill bit, and then I need to use a 1/4 of an inch diameter drill bit and drill to a depth of 5/16 of an inch. So one thing I didn't mention before was prior to drilling these holes, I needed to make sure that the chest was perpendicular, and the way I did that was to put this block, 1, 2, 3 block on the table, and just put this right hand square here, and it's spot on. Anyway, the drilling of the 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch went okay. So what I need to do now is to drill and tap 7BA, which is a 1/4 of an inch from that centre, and then I'll drill the other one here. I'll go to a depth of round about, I think, 0.42 of an inch, but I'll do all that off camera. Well, that's turned out okay. I'm quite happy with that. So now it's a matter of machining the cover. Now the cover is supposed to be 1/8 of an inch thick, but it's significantly thicker than that. So I think what I'll do is, rather than really get it down to 1/8 of an inch, I'll just try and clean it all up, get a nice finish on it, and tidy up the edges so it fits nicely on top of the chest. But I'll do all that off camera. Well, I just couldn't resist showing you this. This cast iron cuts really, really well. Well, that's machined very well. Got a decent finish on the front, and on the back I've marked it up for all the hole positions. So I'll go over to the mill and start drilling. So I've just centred the mill using this wiggler, and I've centred it on the centre of the cover. Now the centre needs to be drilled out 3/16 of an inch, which I'll probably do that first. And then the holes round the edge, they need to be 7BA clear, so there's 6 of those. So that those are 2.6mm in diameter. And the 2 holes at the side of the 3/16 hole, they need to be tapped 7BA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the DRO to position me based upon the dimensions in the drawing, and I'll be using these scribe lines as a double check. Okay, so I've gradually increased drill sizes, and now I'm going to drill it with the 3/16 of an inch. Okay, so now I'm going to start drilling the 7BA clear holes, the 2.6mm wide ones. Now I'm going to start off here, and the distance between the 2 holes is 1 and 9/32 of an inch. So if I divide that by 2, I get 0.641. So I'm going to move the x-axis that way, 0.641. Now the y-axis, the distance between the two holes here from the centre is 3/4 of an inch. So if I divide that by 2, I get 3/8 of an inch for this hole from that centre point, which gives me 0.375. So I'll move the y-axis that way, 0.375, and hopefully we'll be on the money. So this is 0.375. 0.375. So what y-axis? And move the x-axis this way. What do we say? 0.641. Just test that we're on the middle. Perfect. And here you can see the readout on the touch DRO. So now it's a matter of just drilling and tapping the remaining 2 holes. So these need to be tapped to 7BA. Okay, so the cover worked out really well, and what I decided to do is I've just used some double-sided tape just to attach it to the chest. Then I've put it in the vise and I've centred in the hole in the middle, so set the DRO to 0 at that point. Then I've used exactly the same method to position myself over the 7BA clear hole. So I've moved it, the x-axis, let me see, 0.641, and the y-axis 0.375, and it positions me spot on that hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill right through and follow the same process as I did for the cover. Well, that seemed to work out okay. Everything nice and even. So all I need to do now is to drill and tap the cylinder for the studs. Now then, in part 5 when I machined the cylinder and the port face, Jonathan asked a question as to whether or not I'd made sure the bar was level with the table. And I didn't make it clear in the video, but I did initially make sure that it was level by putting a gauge on each side. But then I think I lost my way a little bit, because when I was trying to make it sort of level this way, I think I probably slightly adjusted it. And what I'd omitted to do was to put these little blocks in to rest it on. So based on Jonathan's advice, I've sort of rejigged it in this way, and I'm going to double check it. And when he raised the question initially, I thought it was about 5 thou out. Now, I was thinking I would remachine it. However, I'm double checking it now. This is definitely now parallel with the table, and we're positioned at the back right. So if I move the table backwards, we sort of minus a thou out there. So go the other end. We sort of plus 2 thou. So we're 3 thou out between those two ends. I'll go this way. We sort of still, well, we're about 2.5 thou out. So based on that, I've decided I'm not going to remachine it, but what I'm going to do is, having got it sort of relatively level, I'm going to drill and tap the holes for the studs. Okay, so what I've done is I've temporarily stuck the valve chest onto the cylinder cover using some double-sided sticky tape. Then I've centred the mill on the hole in the middle using this 3/16 of an inch drill bit. So I'm going to take that out now. I'm going to replace it with a 2.6mm drill bit, which is the size of these holes. I'm going to use the coordinates that I used to drill these holes in the cover and the chest, and I'm going to just push the drill through on each of them and just make a little mark. Then I'm going to take the chest off, and then I'm going to use a centre drill and go around again just to double check everything, and then I'll drill through and tap to 7BA. Well, that seems to have worked out okay. Now for a test fit. Oh, that looks good. Now, that's the reason why this cover needs to be 1/8 of an inch, because if it isn't, there isn't enough room to get the nuts on. So what I'll do off camera is I'll just reduce that down to a thickness of 1/8 of an inch. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for the help and support and advice provided. It really is very much appreciated, and in particular to Jonathan for providing that tip on using the 1, 2, 3 blocks to level up the cylinder. I never thought of that, and it is a really good tip. Now, in terms of the sound recording, the sound on this video might be a little bit up and down because I'm still not used to this recorder. I keep on talking into the camera thinking the camera's recording the sound, but actually it's the recorder. But I'll get there in the end. But anyway, I'm really pleased with the way this has turned out, and I hope you like the result too.